Hi, I'm Keith Holland from the Guitar Hospital, and let's spend a second to talk about string gauges a little bit. Choosing your strings can be important, and the gauge of the string is probably the most important part of playability of your guitar and how it feels. It's a subjective thing, but to most people, as they're starting out, they're going to use a light gauge string. That would be a set of strings 12 to 53 or 12 to 54, the 12 being the high E string. It's O12, and O53 in the low E string. But as you get better, you may switch to a higher gauge string, like a medium gauge set, which goes from 13 to 56. There's also a bluegrass set, what they call a bluegrass set. It's not really particular to bluegrass players, but the bluegrass players may be like a higher bottom end, or a deeper bottom end, but they like a lighter high end for playing solos and such. So it's a hybrid set where you have, in the wound strings, you have a medium gauge set, and in the unwound strings, you have a light gauge set. And then the makers of the strings, they have different processes they go through, but the most popular ones are the bronze wound or the 80-20 bronze, which are different materials. And the 80-20 bronze might be a little darker sounding. For those bright guitars, they can really warm them up. Whereas the phosphor bronze, which is probably the most popular, is a real snappy, bright string and has a little bit more output, perhaps, than the 80-20s. There's also the treated strings, which might last a little bit longer. Everybody makes one. Elixir is probably the most popular. They have actually a Gore-Tex winding around the wound strings, which can allow the strings to last a lot longer. I like them a lot because I don't like to change my strings. I'm one of those guys who likes to keep his strings on for a long time and play his guitars as long as possible without changing his strings. It's just a lazy thing for me. But that's a little bit about strings.
Is that the shoemaker's son syndrome?
Yeah, I'm changing everybody else's strings. I don't want to change my own. I'd like to spend a second to talk about string breakage. It can be a problem for some people. One thing I like to tell people is when they're breaking a lot of strings, is I like to ask them, the first thing I like to ask them is, have you been working out a lot lately? That's not an issue. It's just a funny thing I like to say to people. But, strings can break at the nut, but more commonly, they break here at the saddle. And there could be a lot of reasons why it's breaking at the saddle. It could be the material of the saddle is brittle, perhaps, and it causes the wound strings to break. Or you could have, perhaps, a groove in the saddle, which maybe compromises that edge right there, which can break a string as well. Also, sometimes the ball ends maybe are crimped inside there, and it's not very often, but sometimes I see that happen where it can break at the ball end as well. But usually it breaks right here at the saddle or at the nut. So one product I found is this Big Ben's nut sauce. In the past, it's been difficult to use any kind of lubricant because oils or greases can either mess with the material of the nut or the material of the string and actually compromise the hardness of the material in the saddle or nut, or perhaps maybe even mess with the string tone or actually allow for more breakage. So they've invented this. The chemist has come up with this idea for the Big Ben's nut sauce that we here, when we restring a guitar or set up a guitar, we dab a little dab in each slot of the nut, and then just right underneath a string, on each string here, which can reduce that quite a bit. Other things we do is when we do a setup on a guitar, if a person is complaining about string breakage, then we'll check that nut or the saddle and make sure that it's nice and smooth before we continue on with the setup.